All right, so I left off here on the English Bill of Rights the last time, and I'm going to overlap just a little bit because I think it'll make more sense to you. All right, so we left off with Parliament drawing up this new Bill of Rights with William and Mary, the King and Queen of England, and that they're going to have to abide by these rules where Parliament will impose taxes or have the ability to raise armies, but the King can't and the Queen can't do it without their consent. So mostly it's going to be Parliament's job from now on. And so there's more to this. Members of Parliament are going to have being freely elected. In other words, the King and Queen are not going to appoint them, and they're not going to influence the elections. And there's not going to be any more cruel and unusual punishment. You just can't throw people in jail. You can't torture them. Now, that's not to say this didn't go on, because as you will see, the kings and queens didn't always abide by this, but at least this was a good first start to getting this to the point where we're going to stop with that kind of behavior on the part of monarchs. Okay, so let's look at government in America. How does this influence the Americans? Because the Americans are far, far away from all of this. They expected this to affect them. They expected the same treatment, even though they're far away. And even the people who weren't born in England, they felt they were British citizens. Okay, they expected to be treated like that. Each of the 13 colonies had begun with a royal charter, or they were a proprietary colony. And I do have this little chart down here which will help you. I've just found it just on the web, and so I thought I'd throw that in there for you. It tells you how they started and how they evolved over time. Again, I had this little chart about how government filtered down to the colonists and how they could affect their own government. So in proprietary colonies, the owner ruled as they wished, and we've talked about that before. The owner was the last word on the subject. Some colonies eventually became royal colonies where the king appointed a governor, and that's actually what happened with a lot of them over time, where the king actually appoints a governor, and then that governor is not exactly the last word on the subject because the colonists in that colony have some sort of control over him a little bit. They have some say, not a lot, but some influence on him. In general, only white males who own property can vote. So it's not even a question of if you're just a white male you can vote. You have to have some property ownership in order to vote. So that kind of leaves it with just the upper crust, actually. All right, this is an important concept, mercantilism. I kind of spoke about it a little bit before, but it's very, very important. With this concept, and it's not just for England, we discussed it last year in Texas history. It is a concept where colonies are established specifically for the benefit of a mother country. In this case, it's specifically the colonies were established for the benefit of England. Okay, the British didn't send the people over to the colonies just for fun and games or just for the good of the colonists. They were there specifically for the good of England. All raw materials were to be shipped to England, or at least through British ports. The colonists could not trade around the world as they wanted to. It had to go through England first, and really most of it was supposed to stop in England. All finished products, like all your furniture, all your glass, all your pottery, everything, silverware, whatever it is, you name it, cloth, it all had to be bought from England or pass through English ports. And originally England was hoping to find gold and silver, which of course didn't happen for them and didn't happen for the Spanish either, really. Not right away, not in North America. All right. The Navigation Acts came later on because what happened over time was the colonists became very successful. Standard of living became high over here in the colonies, and people became very financially successful, a lot of them. And England wants to put control on that. They want their piece of that pie. They don't want the colonists to just be, oh, so successful. They want to have part of that and make sure they get part of it. And so to get a tighter control on that trade, they passed a series of laws called the Navigation Acts. Now, these are important because it's sort of the very first, and look at time-wise here, we're talking the 1650s. This is 100 years before the Revolution, 125. But it's the very first incursion, it's the very first insult to the colonists as far as taking rights away, taking their freedoms away. And these Navigation Acts forced the colonists to sell raw materials only to England. So sugar cane, wood, tobacco, whatever it is, raw materials, it only goes to England. And it can only go to England. If the colonists want to buy goods from somewhere else, they have to pass through English ports. And they will be taxed heavily, and that made them way more expensive. So, for instance, I might want to buy furniture or a clock. Let's take a clock. I might want to buy a clock from Germany, and it costs me $20 by the time I have it shipped here to the colonies. But I can't buy it straight from Germany. It has to pass through London first, or wherever over there in England, from a British port. Okay, by the time it gets shipped through London or Britain, and then comes here, it costs me $35. Well, the colonists don't like that. It's costing them money. It's costing them a lot of money to have things shipped right through Britain and then come here. All goods under the Navigation Acts have to be carried on British ships or ships built in the colonies. Now, look at the second note. That's important. This is important because at first, all lumber was shipped back to England and they built all the ships in England. But over time, they thought, well, this is ridiculousness. We will just set up shipyards over in the colonies and we will start building our ships in the colonies. We can just build ships over there. Why ship all the lumber back over here to England? We can build ships there. But over time, the colonists became very good at building ships. And that is going to come back to bite England later on. Crews on all these ships had to be nothing but British. And so, again, we're putting high constraints on the things that the colonists are able to do. And the colonists don't really like it. And they find ways to get around it over time. And so, is this okay with the colonists? Not really. In not too long a time, the colonists resented these Navigation Acts. In fact, when I first studied up on this, I thought, I'm not sure why the revolution didn't happen way sooner than it did. But they get around them. After all, they're far away from England. There's no drones or satellites overhead spying down on them, and they just simply get around these things. They start smuggling, okay? They want to set up their own manufacturing. They want to sell their raw materials around the world to the highest bidder. They don't want to sell their lumber just to England. Maybe they can sell it for more money to, I don't know, Italy. And so they would rather do that. And they want to make money the best way they can. And so smuggling in the colonies becomes a way of life, and they become very good at it. And this is not happy for the British. Not for a long time.